Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Okay. So you have a source sheet that I prepared. It's not original research. It's from stuff that's available on Sefaria, and very much sort of truncated because, you know, we want 15, 20 minutes, not 2 hours for some reason, I'm not sure. But I have to begin, you know, like I sometimes say before I speak, I'll say a few words. My vacation usually takes place only in the month of July, but this year it's extending into August a little bit. And the reason that it's extending into August a little bit was so I could be here on this Shabbat, and not because it's July 4th. I mean, actually, if it was only for July 4th, I would, frankly, maybe not be here because I feel compelled, on the one hand, to say something that's actually meaningful and relevant, but on the other hand, it's not going to just anger me. And that's not necessarily easy, so we're going to avoid that responsibility. Like, you know, not that I'm a prophet, but a lot of the prophets also, they pick somebody else, right? But it's on the short site, and so, you know, I wanted to be here with you and not in some other congregation, right? But we're supposed to be celebrating 250 years of our country, and we're red, white, and blue, and something appropriate. So I went out and bought a tie specifically for this occasion, which has the text of the Constitution on the tie. And the text of the Constitution, not the text of the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution wasn't actually adopted until 1787, right? But just as, you know, I spoke before the Haftarah reading, we have, after Tisha B'Av, 7 weeks from Tisha B'Av to Rosh Hashanah, and we also have what's another 7 period, right? 7 weeks from Pesach to Shavuot, right? Because Pesach is meaningless without Shavuot, right? Because we left Egypt so that we could get and observe the Torah, right? And we declared independence from Great Britain. I mean, I say we, right? I had no ancestors who were here at that time, right? Most American Jews had no ancestors who were here at that time. I won't say most, not all, because there certainly were, right? But we still feel ourselves as part of who we, right? And we declared independence from Great Britain, but the purpose is what? So we could live as a free people by our ideals, right, which are enshrined, I mean, they are hinted at, or even more than hinted at, in the Declaration of Independence, but they reach their fulfillment in the Constitution, right? So to celebrate the Declaration of Independence without also celebrating the Constitution is like having Pesach without Shavuot, right? The Constitution is really the document that established our people, and I was happy to note that the most admired, most respected, most beloved, most significant American leader in the world today received the Liberty Medal from the Constitution Center in Philadelphia yesterday, right? And that most beloved, most significant, most important American leader today is giving a talk on the island of Lampedusa in the Mediterranean, where many migrants wind up, or their bodies wind up, as they're trying to migrate from Africa to Europe. So that blessed, beloved, important leader reminds us of our heritage, reminds us how we became Americans, right? Because looking around, I don't see too many Native Americans here, right? We became Americans because our ancestors sought freedom. And they sought the freedom that is enshrined in this document, right? But the roots of that freedom were certainly in the first document, the Declaration of Independence. And, you know, a lot of people who consider themselves patriots while trampling the ideals of our country like to push that we were founded as in Judeo-Christian ideas. Right? Well, they're half right. Because I really believe this, that the ideas that motivated the founding of our country are not Judeo-Christian ideas. They're Jewish ideas, really, and they're certainly part of Christianity, but they got them from us, right? I mean, it's like there, you know, was a reviewer who wrote about a certain book that this book is both novel and good, right? But what's novel is not good, and what's good is not novel, right? And in some ways, you're trying to say that about Christianity, right? That there was much in there that was not both novel and good, but the good part came from us, and the novel part, and it took almost 2,000 years for them to correct course, I think, right? Or else the person I was talking about a couple minutes ago would not be the most beloved, significant, important, admired American leader in the world today. So let's look briefly at some of this material. Okay, so when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. Okay? So we have a source that talks about, you know, a people having the right to freedom from Exodus. Say therefore to the Israelite people, I am the Lord, I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians and deliver you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary chastisements. By the way, this is laid out in a way that's somewhat difficult because I wanted to get everything on 2 pages, right? So there's no spacing between the sources, but the stuff that's in italics, which also is in a smaller font, I made it how to make it in a smaller font. The stuff that's in italics is from the Declaration of Independence, obviously. So, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Okay, and here's from Rashi. And the wrath of the Lord glowed against them, and he went away. This is from the them is Aaron and Miriam. When Aaron and Miriam spoke against Moshe, and as a result, Hashem took the gift of prophecy away from Aaron and Aaron and Miriam, and briefly punished Miriam with leprosy as well. Okay, so but this is what Rashi says: the wrath of the Lord glowed against them, and he went away. Only after he had informed them of their offense did he decree excommunication against them. All the more so should a human being not display anger against their fellow before they inform them of their offense, right? In other words, Rashi is saying God doesn't just separate people from the community without letting them know why. Right? And similarly, the Declaration says if we're going to cut our bonds with England, we need to explain to the rest of the world why. Okay? The next source. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. From Genesis, God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them, right? So even at the very beginning, there is this sense that in a certain way, all people are equal, right? Because they're all created, but B'Tselem Elohim, right? In the image of God, right? Doesn't mean that everybody's the same. And obviously, that goal of equality, it's one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. I would have said, until a couple of years ago that despite that, the arc of our country's moral universe has bent more towards equality. I'm not sure I would say that today, but ha tikva, right? There's hope. There must always be hope. All right. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I'm not an expert in either Enlightenment ideals or the Declaration of Independence, but this comes from John Locke, right? Locke said they are endowed with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and property, right? Life, liberty, and property, and Jefferson turned that to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Unalienable rights. That means you can't sign them away, right? Even if you want to sign them away, you cannot. That's what unalienable means, right? And then we have a source for the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right for the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so this is from the Mishneh Torah, Maimonides, Hilchot Shabbat, the laws of Shabbat. One must not put off the desecration of the Sabbath in treating a serious patient, right? Which we all know that, right? A doctor has to save lives on Shabbat, right? Somebody gets sick on Shabbat, you do what you need to do, right? If it's call the ambulance, you call the ambulance. If it's drive them to the hospital, you drive them to the hospital. Whatever needs to be done to save life, not only may be done, but must be done, right? Like here, right? My mind, he doesn't say one may not put off the desecration of the Sabbath. It says one must not put off the desecration of the Sabbath. Why? It's from Leviticus. If a man obeys them, right? If we obey the mitzvot, v'chai bahem, you shall live by them, right? And Maimonides' gloss on this is chai bahem v'lo yamut bahem, right? That we should live by the Torah and not die because of the Torah. From this, you may infer that the laws of the Torah are not meant to wreak vengeance upon the world, but to bestow on it mercy, kindliness, and peace. Perhaps somebody should teach this particular source to some of the people in the government of Israel, right? That the Torah is not about vengeance, but mercy, kindness, and peace. All right, and then quote from Jeremiah, "The word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord after King Zedekiah had made a covenant with all the people in Jerusalem to proclaim liberty among them," right? So a source for life, a source for liberty, and now one for happiness from Ecclesiastes. "Thus I realized that the only worthwhile thing there is for them is to enjoy themselves and do what is good in their lifetime," right? And I think that that's also true, right? And sometimes, we're enjoying ourselves, right? And we say, how can I enjoy myself? I just suffered a tremendous loss, right? How can I enjoy myself with all the horrible things that are happening right here in my neighborhood, right? How can I enjoy myself? But no, God put us here to enjoy, right? But to do what is good. To do what is good. Enjoy ourselves and do what is good, right? And God created good things, and God says, yes, I want you to enjoy. I want you to enjoy them in an appropriate, kosher way, right? Both literally kosher and figuratively kosher, but I want you to enjoy yourselves, okay? And then, I skipped a lot, and there's this long, and I'm not going to read it. It's worth reading. It is worth reading because see if it doesn't remind you of something else, right? And somebody else. But there is this long, long, long indictment of King George for interfering with the legislative process and threatening legislatures that if they don't do what he wants, he's going to get them, and threatening judges that if the judges don't do what he wants, he's going to punish them, and preventing immigration. They say, right, in 1777, our country needs immigration. The king is preventing immigration. This is harmful to our country, right? He has arbitrary government, suspending the legislatures, bringing large armies, right, occupation against us, etc., etc. But that indictment, that sense that it is wrong for the king to do these things, but also inevitable, right? Which is why we don't have a king, right? Somebody may think they're the king, but they're not the king, right? And that's really important. I mean, and that's why George Washington, who could have been the king, right? He could absolutely have been the king and established a dynasty, or he probably would have called it a dynasty, right? But he said, no, we don't have kings in this country, and I am stepping down, and I'm going to be followed by the next person who also needs to be elected, right? But when the Israelites, and we see this in all the prophetic books, right? The Israelites want a king, and the prophets say, no, this is a bad idea. Right? No, we want a king. So this is what Shmuel says to them. This will be the practice of the king who will rule over you. He will take your sons and appoint them as his charioteers and horsemen, and they will serve as outrunners for his chariots. He will appoint them as his chiefs of thousands and of fifties, or they will have to plow his fields, reap his harvest, and make his weapons and the equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters as perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He will seize your choice fields, vineyards, and olive groves and give them to his courtiers. He will take 1/10 part of your grain and vintage and give it to his eunuchs and courtiers. He will take your male and female slaves, your choice young men, and your asses and put them to work for him. He will take 1/10 part of your flocks, and you shall become his slaves. And Isaiah says, the Lord stands up to plead a cause. He rises to champion peoples. The Lord will bring this charge against the elders and officers of his people. It is you who have ravaged the vineyard. That which was robbed for the poor is in your houses, right? Enriching yourself at the expense of the people, the Torah thinks that's wrong. Right? Many Judeo-Christian leaders apparently think, no, it's not. Right? But the Torah thinks it is. And I mean, this is not like material that was put on Sefaria like yesterday. It was put on Sefaria years and years ago to show that the Jewish ideals that we strive to live by and the American ideals that we strive to live by, they're not always identical, but they are congruent with each other, right? And to be a good Jew, I really believe this. To be a good Jew is to be a good American. And to be a good American is to be a good Jew. And the two are, like I said, they're not identical, but they are congruent. And sometimes being a good American means not doing what the government tells you to do. And sometimes being a good American is, you know, we all know this, and there's no need to belabor it, but that is why I think many of us feel, you know, like we want to celebrate, but there's a lot of things going on that need to be not celebrated and need to be pointed out even on this day of celebration. Okay, so that I'm done, but if there are questions or comments or rebuttals, yeah.
Well, it's not related to this, it's related to the Torah portion.
Okay.
So often, women in the Torah are just Mrs. So-and-so. Today, the lady who, she gets named.
Well, the five daughters. Slow. Yes, okay, you're talking about Cosby, right? Cosby, right?
Yeah.
Gets named, right? The Midianite lady who got shish kebab. I don't know. But I thought you were going to talk about something else, much more significant, right? The 5 daughters of Zelophehad, right? We're going through this whole census, right? And Zelophehad has 5 daughters and no sons, right? And later on in the parsha, but not a section we read today, right? Because what's the problem, right? The problem is that sons inherit, right? So what happens if you only have daughters, right? So the Zelophehad dies, and the 5 daughters of Zelophehad are named, and they go to Moshe and they say, you know, it's not fair, right? Not fair. What happens to our real estate and our stuff? And this is one of the cases. I mean, I wish the system still worked that way, but it doesn't, right? What did Moshe say?
Talk to God about it.
I'll talk to God about it, exactly, right? You seem to have a good point, right? But the Torah is not what the Torah says, so let me go talk to God. And what does God say?
You got a good point.
They got a good point, right? B'nai Zelophehad Sodkot, right? The daughters of Zelophehad are correct. So what do you say? Okay, if you have only daughters, no sons, right? Only daughters, no sons. Paying attention to it, right? The daughters can inherit, but they have to marry within the tribe. Okay? Why do they have to marry within the tribe?
So that the land and the property stays
In the tribe, right? Because if a woman marries outside of the tribe, right, then whatever she brings into marriage goes to the other tribe, right? So if your father has sons as daughters but no sons, you can inherit, but you have to marry within the tribe. Okay, so that's what because that is really like the first women's rebellion, right? Going to the leaders of the people and saying, hey, as they would say in modern Hebrew, Zelo fair. No, that's really what they would say. Zelo fair. And, you know, Moshe goes, Zelo fair. Right? And God, Nahom Zelo fair. Right? So it's low fair, so you have to make it fair. Right? Wasn't part of the Parsha, and you know, I wanted to, but important too, absolutely. So that's what I thought you were getting at, right? So we have actually 6 women named in the Parsha, right? 1 for being Shish Kebab, and 5 for going to Moshe and saying Zelofim. Yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, it's a little, there's this thing,
Right.
the Indian fans from the part of the Indian other fans is daughter.
Okay. All right. So we've got more than those 6. Okay. I stand corrected, but it's pretty rare. Yeah. Okay. So Shabbat Shalom.
I'm sorry,